This is Grape Video 23, Pruning Severity. What do we mean by pruning severity? Well, the definition I'm offering is how many fruiting buds should you keep on a grapevine at the time of pruning? Just how much do you leave on the vine? Well, that's a pretty loaded question, and many presentations will dance around an answer to that, but we're going to give you some very specific information on this topic in this video. But it only applies to mature grapevines. It does not apply to grapevines when you plant them or in their first year or two of management. Those are covered in subsequent videos on pruning in videos 25, 26, and 27. When we talk pruning severity, we really mean how many buds will you leave on a mature grapevine, say when the vine is 4 years old or older. So let's see what we can say about this topic to help you as a pruner. As we start, we'll remind you that terminology that was presented in Grape Video 3, Grape Buds, and Grape Video 21, Basic Skills for Pruning Grapevines, will be used in this presentation. And if you feel rusty on those particular topics or terms, you might want to review those two videos. We'll start out with this. When we talk about pruning severity and how many buds do you leave on a vine, we really mean the word node. This is from Grape Video 3, and the correct term along a cane is node. But it's so friendly and easy to use the term buds that we're going to talk about buds. And in this case, count buds. How many buds would we mentally count to leave on the grapevine at the time of pruning? So let's talk buds, knowing that the viticulturally correct term is a node. Now, let's get into the heart of it. Severe pruning. What is severe pruning? We can say if we keep too few fruiting buds on the vine, we have pruned the vine severely. The results are likely to be a small crop because we didn't leave enough fruiting buds, and excessively vigorous shoot growth leading to excessive vine size. On the other hand, light pruning, meaning you keep too many fruiting buds, is likely to result in excessively large crops of poor quality. We don't want that. And low vigor shoot growth leading to small vine size, which will cause smaller crops in the years ahead. We don't want that. So we're looking to do optimum pruning. Isn't that a nice word, optimum? It means correct. Whatever is the very best. We keep the right number of fruiting buds for optimum pruning. And the results are this: optimum level of fruit production with good quality, and optimum shoot vigor leading to optimum vine size. Well, we're going to get past the word optimum and give you some specific numbers for some of these. But just keep in mind that you can prune the vine too severely and cheat yourself on crop and cause the vine to get too large, or you can prune it too lightly and cause problems with too many fruiting buds, too much crop, and you can actually drive the size of the vine down over time because of that excess crop on the vine. So this is what we're headed for when we talk about pruning severity, to get it just right in the middle somewhere. So let's look further. Why do we prune grapevines? Well, it's this idea of balancing the vine vegetative growth and the size of the crop. And we've shown this in another video, this particular set of pictures, because The picture on the left shows a large, excessively large vine with growth all over, with excessive vine canopy. And the picture on the lower right shows excess crop. You can't tell that from the picture, but this fruit was not harvested because it was of such poor quality. There was too much fruit. The vine couldn't handle it. So this is excessive cropping or excessive vegetative growth, and we don't want either. We want something in the middle. Back 35 years or so ago, when I took this picture, we were holding the grape pruning schools in the Finger Lakes region of New York, and at that time we tried to teach balanced pruning. And what do we mean by that? Here we go. Back at that time, we had balanced pruning formulas that related the size of the vine to the amount of count buds that we would leave on the vine. And we literally weighed the 1-year-old wood or canes on a vine to establish the size of the vine in that way, and then relate how many buds we would leave based on the size of the vine. Let's take, for example, the very prevalent variety Concord. How would we prune Concord using a balanced pruning formula? Well, here's a data table from one of our publications years ago that relates for specific varieties the amount of buds to keep on the vine relative to the size of the vine as we measure it in pounds of cane prunings. So let's look at Concord. This data table says that for the first pound of cane prunings, leave 30 buds. 30 buds plus. Plus what? Well, for each additional pound of cane prunings, leave 10 more buds. So if we had a vine and we pruned it and weighed the cane prunings and it weighed 2 pounds, we would leave 30 plus 10 or 40 buds. Now, it isn't appropriate to just keep adding more buds the larger the vine gets, because we'll get such an excessive number of buds on the vine that the shoot density will be so great that we'll get excess crowding of shoots on the vine. So these formulas were developed for a maximum number of buds to be retained on the vine. And there it is in the third column. This formula says that regardless of how large the vine gets, the maximum number of buds that you should leave on the vine is 60. And that's it. That is what we would call a pruning formula for Concord, and that's how we taught it 35 or more years ago. Let's take another example. This is the French hybrid Marichal Fauche. We often just call it Fauche. And if we look at this table again, it's a small clustered variety. So by the formulas in this table, we would leave 20 buds for the first pound of cane prunings and 10 for every additional pound, and a maximum of 50. I think the reason why the hybrids were considered so fruitful with base buds that we could get at times, and it had been measured, we could get 2 tons of grapes per acre from hybrid varieties when we cut off all the count buds, because the base buds contributed so much fruitfulness. So these pruning formulas for hybrids were adjusted down from native varieties like Concord, so that we purposely left fewer count buds on those, knowing that buds that we didn't see, the base buds, were going to contribute to the crop much more on hybrids than the native varieties. And that was some of the rationale behind these numbers in this table. So we'd go out. Here's one of the pruning classes. I'm thinking this one was all the way over in Hector, New York, and I can see in the end there the instructor in the yellow hat. I believe that was Richard Riesenberger from Widmer's Wine Cellars, who was showing students how to prune vines and get them balanced. Well, vine balance. We know that pruning methods can affect vine balance, but we also know that if we prune a Concord vine with the formula we just showed you, and we prune it the same way every year with the same formula, guess what? The vines don't perform the same every year. Some years we'd have big crops. Some years we'd have a small crop. Maybe the crop was frozen out in a spring freeze. Maybe there was lots of rain early in the growing season, so the vine grew a lot compared to a more droughty season. So we've come to appreciate that it's not just pruning methods that influence vine balance. No, many things affect vine balance. And here are some of those that I've put on this slide, and it's probably not an exhaustive list. There's probably other things we could add in here, but many, many things can affect vine balance, not just pruning methods. So we have to keep in mind that all these factors do contribute to vine balance, and we shouldn't expect that just by pruning we can achieve vine balance. So let's put it like this. It is not possible to obtain vine balance solely through dormant pruning, but appropriate dormant pruning is essential to have any chance to achieve balanced vine performance. So I hope we made that point. We are for balanced pruning, but that's just part of the equation for obtaining vine balance. Go back to those pictures. Too much crop on the right, too much vegetative growth on the left. We want to bring those to the middle, don't we? Yes, we do. Okay, so let's give some specific numbers to what we call optimum. Well, for vegetative growth, the optimum would be something like fill the vine space completely with 1.5 to 2 layers of leaves. Regardless of pruning weight, let's fill that vine space. Say you have 6-foot vine spacing, let's fill that trellis with 1.5 to 2 layers of leaves in the mid to latter part of the growing season. If you don't completely fill the vine space, if it's got open areas, that's not good. If you wind up having so much leaf area that you have 3, 4, 5 layers of leaves, they can't function well, that's not good. The optimum is 1.5 to 2 layers of leaves. Well, for a crop optimum, that's a little more difficult to define because it really depends on the grower and the variety and the market. There are markets for grapes at times where we don't need the very highest level of maturation of the fruit in terms of degrees Brix or sugar or acidity or any of those things. Sometimes the market that a grower is aiming for can be satisfied by lower levels of fruit maturity. For example, in the juice grape market, it's often the case that the minimum acceptable level of soluble solids, Brix if you will, percent sugar, can be around 15% sugar. If that's the case, the grower needs to get at least that to market his crop, but he doesn't need to get 16, 17, 18% sugar because his market will be satisfied at 15 Brix. And it will change with variety, with the conditions. So we leave that definition of crop optimum at the maximum crop with acceptable fruit quality, and the grower has to define what is acceptable relative to his market. I'm going to offer a strategy for determining the pruning severity of mature grapevines, and it goes something like this. Prune to fill the trellis with the optimum amount of shoot growth, which we've just defined as 1.5 to 2 layers of leaves over the whole vine space. Then, adjust the crop level as needed, and as we've already discussed, that will depend upon the individual grower's market and the quality needed to satisfy that market. We're going to offer some specific numbers here now, and we're going to do it first for juice grape varieties, and we're going to talk about large vines, and I just put in parentheses here, a large vine is about 0.45 pounds of cane prunings times, say, an 8-foot vine space, or a 3.6 pounds of cane prunings per vine. So if we have large vines in the vineyard already established, what can we say about pruning severity for juice grape varieties? Well, over the years, we've come to appreciate that the pruning formula that we had several decades ago that said 60 buds maximum per vine, that was too few. If we keep pruning vines that get very large in size back to 60 buds, what happens is those vines get larger, and we, in a sense, cheat ourselves on cropping level that we need to pay the bills. So in recent years, growers have often found that 80 buds maximum per vine is a good starting point when you manually prune vines and you select high quality buds with manual pruning. Now we're going to, in a later video, talk about mechanical pruning. And when you do that, you don't choose selectively all high quality buds. No, you get some really good ones and some really poor ones. So if you're going to mechanically prune, growers in recent years have tried to approach 100 to say 120 buds maximum per vine, and that's a good starting point for non-selective mechanical pruning. We're going to approach wine grape varieties in a somewhat different way, and we'll start with this shoot density definition of 5 shoots per foot of canopy is a starting point for establishing a pruning severity. And that information comes from a wonderful publication, Sunlight into Wine by Smart and Robinson. And if you don't know that publication, you may want to get acquainted. So think of that, 5 shoots per foot of canopy, and this is about 2.5 inches in spacing between each shoot as an ideal or an optimum. Now, I stressed canopy and not per foot of row because, as we've covered in several videos, there are training systems like this one, the Scott Henry training system, that have what we call divided canopies, so that we have a vertically divided canopy, we call it, and we have one canopy going up from the fruit zone, one down from the fruit zone. And if we talk about 5 shoots per foot of canopy, we should have about 5 shoots going up per foot of trellis there and 5 shoots going down. If you're interested in Scott Henry training and haven't reviewed it yet, this photo is from Grape Video 9, the Scott Henry training system. So most of the time we're not dealing with training systems that have divided canopies. So when we say 5 shoots per foot of canopy, we really mean 5 shoots per foot of row. But not always. Sometimes there's these exceptions when we deal with divided canopy training systems. Okay, let's see how we apply this strategy of having 5 shoots per foot of canopy in a vineyard situation to get an ideal shoot density. And we'll start with the example of vines that are trained with midway or cordon, and we presented that training system in Grape Video 7. And we're going to say that the vines are on a 6-foot vine spacing, and at 5 shoots per foot of canopy, that calculates to about 30 buds on that vine. Well, with spur pruning of midway or cordon, we can calculate we would need about 8 2-bud spurs on each side of the vine, 16 on one side, 16 on the other, for a total of 32. And that's pretty close to the 30 buds we calculated above. We should say at this time that we only make these calculations for the buds that we're retaining in the renewal zone, where we're going to bear the crop for the next year. And we covered the renewal zone in great detail in Grape Video 22. We don't include in this calculation renewal spurs or trunk renewal canes, things that are outside of the renewal zone that are going on the vine as a part of the maintenance of the vine in general. But I should say that you have to be careful when you use renewal spurs not to go spur crazy and leave 20 spurs on the vine and wind up with 40 extra buds that you hadn't considered in this formula. You really need to be judicious in the use of renewal spurs, and you'll learn that with time when you prune vines more and more. Let's give another example. This time we're going to talk about vines that are trained umbrella niffin, such as presented in Grape Video 11. And when I think of umbrella niffin training for a wine grape, the Cayuga White variety comes immediately to mind. I grew those in my little vineyard back in New York years ago, and Cayuga White has as a characteristic fairly long internodes between the buds. And so when you prune a long cane on Cayuga White, you usually wind up with quite long canes. And a way to handle those long canes is with the umbrella niffin training system. So let's just envision a Cayuga White vine that we're training umbrella niffin, and we're going to prune it with vines that are on an 8-foot spacing, and at 5 shoots per foot of canopy, we calculate that we need about 40 buds. Using long cane pruning, then we could calculate, let's put 2 10-bud canes on each side of the vine for a total of 40. And then of course you would add in a judicious amount of renewal spurs back in the head region in addition to these 40 buds. Well, this is a starting point when you're pruning. We don't think that these numbers are hard and fast, and we do appreciate that when you start pruning your vines, you may well need to adjust your pruning severity with experience based on the soil type that you're on and the fertilization and the weather and how much rain you get year in and year out. You may find that when you start with the pruning severities that we've mentioned in this video, that you wind up adjusting that severity up or down with your experience, because you are the expert in your vineyard. No one knows your vines better than you. But we hope with this video we've given you some insights on a starting point for pruning severity so that you will be a good pruner. Until our next video, we'll say thank you for your attention and happy grape growing.